things. And WSAFCA we did meet in closed session, and I'll turn to my legal counsel to give a report.
So the board did meet in closed session on 3 items. The first item on the closed session agenda was conference with the real property negotiator. No action was taken in closed session. There will be action taken in open session. I believe it's agenda item 5. The second item was conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation in the case of WSAFCA versus Campora et al. Action was taken in closed session to accept the last and final settlement offer of the defendants in that case. The third item, conference with legal counsel regarding anticipated litigation involving 2 cases. No action was taken in closed session. Action will be taken in the open session, and the 2 cases are referenced as agenda items 7 and 8 on the regular agenda. That's the report.
Thank you. Mr. Denton usually runs SAFCA meetings, and I have a tendency to run things just a little bit differently. So if we'd all stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First thing I need is agenda approval.
I'll move to approve the agenda as listed, although I believe we will be moving one item, yes, item 6, from the consent item. So, approved as adjusted.
All right, I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded. Any opposed? Hearing none, that is so ordered. This is the time now for public comment on matters not on our agenda. And I do have one request. Kim McDonald. You can barely hear me. I'm sorry.
Thank you. I came last month, couldn't talk, so here I am. I have repeatedly requested over the years that someone get in touch with me with a timeline on basically how this project is proceeding and keeping me up to date as far as when the projected time is that they're thinking that we may be removed from our houses. Reason being, I have maintenance to do on my house, all of the neighbors do, and we'd like to get a ballpark idea of what it is sane to do and what things should be left undone. So far I've asked at least a dozen times and have not received anything in writing, even as far as if they'd say, we're not doing the houses until after the road is already put in the back, or we're not going to do the houses until, and some big landmark thing that we can look for and then estimate the time from there. We would very much appreciate any hint as to whether we're staying in our houses, like Mr. Dirksen said the one time to my friends, July, might be as early as July we're out. Well, Mr. Fabian said no, the contracts won't even be done by then. And can someone say 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 2 months? Anything would be appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sure staff is taking notes, so we'll see if we can get back to you.
We didn't even get notified of the meeting time.
Approval of the March 12th meeting minutes. We received those separately and need approval of those minutes.
And I'll move for approval of the minutes as presented.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any opposed? Hearing none, that is so ordered. Review of monthly year-to-date revenue expenses.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. This month's report is for February 2015. On the revenue side, the agency didn't receive any revenue. On the expense side, in addition to normal admin expenses, we did O&M distributions to the member agencies to the tune of about $450,000, and that was their share of the first installment of the 2015 flood assessment, and also the August accrual that was sent out. On project expenses, most of the project expenses took place in the Southport project. The large expense for that month was the escrow payment for the Washington Unified School District property. We're also, in the future reports, going to start pulling in the new bond that was recently closed. We're doing some requisition packages now, and so in the April or May report, you'll see that revenue starting to come into the Fund 870. And there was no state true-up payments received, and that is the extent of the activity for this month. That ends the report.
Anybody have any questions?
Yes, and I don't have it in front of me right now, but in the flood progress report, there's a discussion and a change of accounting methods, and agency administrative expenses are going to be, or are split out. Can you explain that a little bit, or are you familiar with that?
Yeah, you see it, as far as the cash position, it doesn't change the cash position, but it's how it changed the fund where the capital improvement project expenses are being captured. And that's a new fund that's called Fund 871, and you'll see it in line item D.
Yeah.
And it's a GASB requirement that requires us to pull our capital expenditures out of our O&M and administrative cost fund so that we can keep a clear picture numerically of what the agency is doing for capital expenses and what its overhead and administration costs are. So from the cash flow perspective, it hasn't changed anything in that perspective, but the funds we're going to report on has changed a little bit.
But are staff costs and administrative costs for these individual capital projects still in the 871 figures?
They're captured in the project in Fund 871.
Okay.
General administrative
General
staff
stuff is
costs are
outside.
caught
Okay.
in 870.
Gotcha.
Okay.
That's all.
That's it. Okay, consent agenda, and number 6 is being requested by staff to be pulled. And so we have a consent agenda consisting of agenda item number 5 only.
And I'll move for approval of the resolution that's in item 5 of the consent agenda.
I will second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Any opposed? Hearing none, it is so ordered. I think I turned to Mark. You're going to handle this?
Item 6?
6?
Item 6, okay, we'll do it now. Staff is requesting the board's authority to authorize the general manager to execute a 1-year lease on agency property that was acquired south of the city limits, and to negotiate with 2 parties and have them deliver to the agency next week proposals to farm that property for 1 year. And that's extend the request. Change the recommended action, actually.
Any questions?
No? I'll move for approval to give authorization to the general manager to finalize and negotiate a lease.
And execute the
1 year.
lease.
Yeah, not to extend 1 year. Yeah, and I'll second that.
We don't have a lot of time. Growing season is upon us. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Are any opposed? Hearing none, that is so ordered.
Thanks.
This is a public hearing and consideration of resolutions 15-04-01, authorizing an eminent domain action to acquire real property for South River Road Early Implementation Project, Yolo County parcel number 046-030-004-000. And Paul.
Good morning, Director Christoph, members of the WSAFCA Board. Today I'm going to be presenting two resolutions of necessity for the Sacramento River Southport Early Implementation Project. I will discuss some of the, working up and getting into the findings of the resolutions, I'll discuss some of the goals for the Southport project, a brief overview of some of the decisions made to advance the project to its current design, and then I will present information on the required findings of the, for a resolution of necessity. So first of all, I want to point out that the goals for this Southport EIP are for public safety and the public health of the residents within the city while minimizing impacts to the community as much as possible. Secondarily, as you may recall, the Southport project was selected based on repairing some of the highest, riskiest areas in our levee program. The city is surrounded by levees, and Southport showed many deficiencies. And then lastly, in terms of trying to take advantage of State 1E funding, we're trying to select the least cost alternative that achieves the greatest public good and complies with federal and state requirements. So how do we get here? You know, first of all, there was a problem identification report that was completed by HDR in 2008. We did an alternative analysis report in the following year. And then in 2010, we actually started looking at Southport as being a potential project. Over the course of 2010 and then culminating with a presentation to you in January 2011, a preliminary design report was presented. Later that year, a final design report was presented. Just after that final design report, you directed staff, and they had finished putting together a draft EIR for public review. That went through a significant review period and public comment period and was brought back to you in August 2014 when you approved the project. The real estate process was initiated in October of 2014. These are other milestones that are coming up. 90% design is expected in June. After that 90% design for the levee improvements, the Board of Senior Consultants will then review that and provide feedback to the project team. We anticipate 100% design for the levee improvements to be completed later at the end of the calendar year, and would go out to bid in January with an award the following spring. Part of the reason we're coming for you today is we are also in the Village Parkway design documents are all complete. We're putting together the final touches for a bid, a construction bid, and that will go out probably in July. So hopefully begin construction in the fall. Can you go back? Thank you. So to get here, I want you, again, we talked about the preliminary design report. The staff presented a decision hierarchy for your consideration. First of all, identify deficiencies and their causes. Let's try to test various solutions to those known deficiencies. Then let's look at the solutions for the various problems that we have or deficiencies and try to integrate them to have the best, most solid design. One that minimizes impacts and maximizes benefits. So after that design hierarchy, the following month, staff came back to you to present combined measure alternatives. Go ahead, Chelsea. So the first one that I'd like to present, kind of washed out a little bit, was the adjacent levee alternative, the combined measure alternative 1. This considered adjacent levee with berms and an adjacent levee with cutoff walls. Go ahead. CMA2 was a setback levee with berms. It had some aspects of an adjacent levee with a cutoff wall, especially in the tails. Setback levee with berms running through the middle of the project, and it also included a partial levee degrade. So this is where we start seeing a setback levee and a partial levee degrade to try to increase part of the floodplain. And then the third combined measure alternative talked about fix-in-place alternatives with seepage berms. So in some cases, this looked at cutoff walls with fix-in-place solutions, as well as fix-in-place with berms. Go ahead. So going through all of those combined measure alternatives, it was important to get from going from a feasibility level of design, which is what that process was about, to actually selecting a design alternative. So again, moving forward and staying consistent with the Southport goals to try to construct as much flood protection as possible as soon as we can, minimize to the extent feasible adverse effects on the community, and achieving the first objective. So as I talked about, the three combined measure alternatives assemble a number of remediation measures that work together to try to solve the deficiencies in the Southport project. Preliminary design alternatives were refined to show that, when you put together levee improvements and seepage remediation measures to provide the best balance of flood protection while still considering the effects of private property based on the information we had available at the time. So this was part of the decision that came before you. We talked about CMAs 1 and 3, adjacent and flat sloping. Alternative 1 and alternative 2 were both advanced to 15% design. Alternative 1 includes a fix-in-place at either end of the proposed project combined with setback levee beginning in segment B through and behind Bees Lake and adjacent to and an adjacent levee with seepage berms through segment F. Alternative 2 included a fix-in-place at both ends of the proposed project and combined a setback levee with seepage berms. And that seepage berm then went from B all the way through segment F. Next slide. The WSAFCA board approved advancing segments A through G where the flood risk reduction solutions were common to both alternatives. So in this particular instance, it was common to A, C, D, E, and G. Value engineering studies for segment B and F were completed in May and August of 2012 respectively. Those were presented to you in those months, and based on the feasibility of the measures evaluated, the impacts of private property, the cost effectiveness, ability to maximize flood protection for Southport, and based on all of those, the WSAFCA board directed the project team to integrate the preferred design alternatives and include the information from the value engineering studies for both segments B and F. The findings for a resolution, and so that's essentially how we got to our current design today. That's been advancing between 65 to the 90% level, which I had mentioned earlier in my presentation. So today we're here to talk about two resolutions, Resolution 150401 and 150402. I want to go through the findings of the first parcel and then give an opportunity for the public to speak. So the findings that are necessary is that first of all, we need to find there's the public interest and a necessity for the project. It's planned and located in a manner that's the most compatible with the greatest public good and the least private injury. That the property is necessary to the project, and an offer has been made to the owner of record. So, in terms of the public interest in the proposed projects, the Sacramento River Southport Early Implementation Project is a 5.6-mile levee improvement project. It includes fix-in-place adjacent and setback levee solutions in combination with seepage berms and cutoff walls. It's designed to address known deficiencies in Southport and to provide 200-year flood protection meeting state and federal standards. It will protect over 25,000 people in Southport and protect $4 billion in community assets. Without the proposed project improvements, residents and businesses are at risk during a major storm event. Next, I'd like to present the proposed project is planned and located in a manner that will be most compatible with the greatest public good and least private injury. As you know, the Southport EIP project is located along the western bank of the Sacramento River. This project stretches from where the Army Corps of Engineers Sac Bank project completed all the way to the city's southern boundary. There's significant erosion along the entire area of this riverbank, and there are other levee deficiencies, including seepage, slope stability, as well as geometry issues. The project team has evaluated numerous design solutions to achieve the 200-year flood protection for the city, and the design selection was deliberate and considered public safety, engineering requirements and constraints, project borrow needs, habitat mitigation requirements, impacts of private property and the community, and WSAFCA's overall ability to provide the greatest amount of protection with existing resources. The property is necessary for the project. The Yokoyama parcel is approximately 27 acres and located in the middle of segment F. 2 acquisition areas are needed for the project. 7.6 acres are needed for levee improvements, which include the levee, an offset area, and operations and maintenance corridor. This area is being acquired in fee to ensure that WSAFCA will have the necessary rights to operate and maintain the levee and repair it if necessary to protect the city of West Sacramento's citizens and businesses. Construction of Interim Village Parkway will require approximately 3/4 of an acre. The Interim Village Parkway is the road relocation of South River Road that is currently located on top of the levee. Because some of the levee will be degraded, South River Road needs to be relocated. The location of the relocation is coincident and consistent with the city's general plan. A temporary construction easement is also going to be required along the Interim Village Parkway acquisition to allow for construction workers to work there. It's temporary, and to provide a buffer to any activities that may be going on the remaining of the parcel. And the last thing, in terms of the findings for the resolution is, in the January meeting, the WSAFCA board approved just compensation for the Yokoyama parcel in the project. BRI assembled the first offer for Ms. Yokoyama following that January board meeting, and in accordance with Government Code 7267.2, the written offer was mailed to Ms. Yokoyama. The most recent correspondence acknowledges that Ms. Yokoyama did receive a written offer. That concludes my presentation for this part of for this resolution.
Does anybody have any questions? If not, I am going to open the public hearing, and I am going to, I have a request here from Victoria Yakimo. Would you like to speak?
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, and I'm also disappointed that the Honorable President Denton is not here today to hear my comments. And my goal is to address those conditions that were presented to me concerning the confiscation of our property. And those are the conditions outlined in the resolution of eminent domain, items number A through C. Item number D is not applicable, and items E and F were excluded from my comment. Now, I received a notice of hearing on March 26th concerning that you would be adopting a resolution of eminent domain over our property and scheduling a decision from the Superior Court within 6 months of this hearing. If I look back at the time element, I see that you have indicated that I was received an offer in January, which is not true, and your meeting minutes are incorrect, as they have been in the past, and they cannot simply be used as evidence because they're totally unreliable. I actually received an offer at the end of February. And then in this offer, it was highly indicated that I needed to sign the Bender-Rosenthal document There were comment notes, a little sticky note saying sign here, sign here, sign here, sign here. I was asked to sign our property away to the West Sacramento Area Flood Control Agency, which I will refer to as the agency from now on. And then shortly thereafter, in fact, 25 days from this hearing, I received a second sign here document, which was coffee stained in a shredded envelope clipped to my front gate. And I looked at that and I said, this is really a first-class government outfit. Now, addressing this situation as it now stands, I have submitted to you a 22-page comment on your eminent domain proceedings, which includes my concerns as well as my past documentation to the California Flood Control Agency, it'd be the Central Valley Flood Control Agency, as well as the Army Corps of Engineers. And I'd like that all included as part of the conditions that I'm addressing in items number A through C. In addition, I want to be sure that you are aware of the fact that addressing conditions A through C, I have made numerous presentations to this board requesting alternative plans that were at least injurious to our property. And I would also like to remind you that I have many documented letters submitted to the board requesting least injurious procedures to comply with 200-year flood control without damaging our farm business, our family heritage, and our home. Also, I am submitting that we have notes and minutes from private meetings that I've had with the agency, and that included a meeting on August 7th, 2012, a meeting on February 26th, 2012. It was closed door, and also a meeting with your engineers on August 8th, 2013. Those are all parts of the considerations of conditions A through C. Also, I am also including for your consideration all legal documents that were submitted by my neighbor to the north concerning, that were of the public record, considering the least private injury to both of our properties, as they have been our co-workers in business, the agricultural business, as well as the impacts of the setback levy was equivocable for both of our properties. Now, I want to point out some of the highlights of all of these conditions that I'm presenting and addressing those conditions. First of all, I keep hearing the mantra, the greater good, with the least private industry. However, the grassroots of all of this is that the agency is going to make a lot of money off of this, a lot of money. They have secretly, without transparency, created a mitigation bank. Those mitigation credits are going to be sold after confiscation of all the private property owners who are providing the green space for this per-profit attempt. Now, I think that mitigation bank, because it wasn't transparent and was only pointed out by my neighbor who found it in the public record, is probably an illegal process. Why weren't the homeowners told? A mitigation bank was developed and your properties that would be seized were going to be a part of a profit attempt by the agency or processed by the agency. All right, I want to address also the fact that the government code requires that the agency make every reasonable effort to acquire property by negotiation. I've been denied that. There has been no attempt whatsoever of anyone from the agency to contact me and to enter into the negotiation process. So 25 days after I received the offer with sign here, sign here, sign here, click to my gate, I've been called into this hearing and where the board intends to develop a resolution of eminent domain. So without that offer to, or without that provision allowing me to negotiate, then we're in the realm of, is this legal? I think not. Now, the other thing, let's get down to that offer. We have a custom-built home that was constructed by a leading Japanese-American builder that was my parents' dream home, solid brick, 2,800 square feet with an attached garage, that two-car garage. We have 2 wells on the site. We have outbuildings, and we also have a lot of concrete poured, improvements, and with all of those peripherals, those add-ons, an aesthetically pleasing ranch-style house that has been maintained immaculately over the years, we've been offered $30,000. $30,000. Now, you can't tell me the agency's not in the business of making money off of this. $30,000. Well, that is insulting. It is ludicrous, and it's not acceptable. The other factor about this is that the land. Let's take a look at the land in that offer. The land, we are told, we have no rights to. Therefore, 95% of that land, well, they're not going to, the agency isn't going to even offer as an offer. Only 5% is rightfully ours. What's going on here? I think when my parents bought that land, they are Americans. This is the American dream, to own land. That separates the United States from every other single nation in the world, the right to own property. When they bought that land, they were looking to the future. This is going to be their business, the way they're going to make an income, the way they're going to bring up their families, the way they're going to see a future for them and all future generations. Well, 95% of that turns out doesn't even belong to us. So the agency intends to take that with no compensation whatsoever. Eminent domain procedures, a resolution of eminent domains. I think the agency is going to make out like bandits on this one, and especially with the mitigation credit income, I think that's the way of, well, the city simply going to gain the biggest profit, the biggest benefit in the terms of the well-being of others for the greater good in flood control and providing off of our backs of recreational areas for all to enjoy. I find that highly unacceptable. The other thing that happened when I looked at that offer is that the agency decided to create an irregular shaped parcel with a setback levy. And then they put Village Parkway right in the middle, but it has a big curve in it. So now the agency says, well, the land that remains and is rightfully yours has been devalued. It's not worth much anymore because it's an irregular shaped parcel. And that's part of the offer. I don't approve of that, and I'm not going to approve of that. I haven't been in the business of real estate, but common sense tells you that that's a very good game plan to move someone out. About that Village Parkway Road, it's curved. I complained about that. I said, why are you putting a curved street right across farmland? Well, I heard some excuses of why that happened, but I now realize the curved road makes an irregular shaped parcel, and an irregular shaped parcel is worth less. And in the grand scale of things, widening Village Parkway would allow the condemnation and also the confiscation and eminent domain of more land at a cheaper price. So, the Village Parkway is going to create a severe safety hazard to anyone who's farming on our property. It certainly ruins my plans to farm the land in the future, which was my intent, and it also hampers the current farm operations. I met with the agency. I've asked for utilities to be included with Village Parkway. I haven't received a response. Even though the agency says, you as a homeowner are unresponsive, the tactics that the agency have used are totally unresponsive to any of my requests. The agency has operated in a veil of secrecy, short-term planning, and moving quickly to try to force people out of their homes. One of the things that I am truly aware of is that, surprise, the offer includes an easement on our property to construct Village Parkway. Well, why wasn't I ever informed that this was going to be an issue here? No one told me there was going to be an easement included in the property acquisition. Well, there is. Well, surprise, we're getting you out, so you could take an easement also as part of your financial loss. The other factor is that there's a family member living in the house. Where's that family member going to go? Used to be in the old days, since I grew up in West Sacramento, and I'm basically a native of West Sacramento, you built a shack over there by the edge of the levee, and you moved in it. Well, this isn't going to happen this time. So where's the relocation of it? Where's the relocation benefit out of this? Is there a consideration for relocation? No. The offer is $30,000 for your house. Now get out. Okay. The other thing, let me tell you this. I've heard over and over and over, this whole operation is going to be, the Southport project is going to be the least injurious to the citizens who are losing their homes and land. Well, I contradict that. First of all, the agency has rejected reasonable alternative levee construction procedures, methods that have been documented by our own engineers. They have insulted our family. They have insulted our heritage with an absurd appraisal. $30,000. Also, I find it interesting that the agency also likes to contradict itself, where it states that the best interim use for any available lands is agriculture. But then yet, they pull all of our agricultural wells, they pull our domestic wells. Agriculture can't go on there. Farming can't go on. And the manner in which the land is confiscated is in a manner that jeopardizes our farm and our human welfare. The interesting thing is the agency devalues the remaining land. And that's because of the future confiscations that will, for Village Parkway, when that road is widened. What the agency has done is when we had that first public workshop, don't worry, we're going to move your house back away from the levee. If worse comes to worse, we're going to take your house, we're going to move it back on your property, and you don't have to worry, because even though you might lose this land, you won't lose a house. You'll still have a place to live. Well, is there any compensation for that? Is there any consideration of that in the offer? No. $30,000 for your house and anything to do with the dwelling. Also, let's confiscate your wealth. Well, the other thing is that when those wells are condemned, there's no water there. But then we're worried about that 200-year-old flood, aren't we? The intent, obviously, of the agency is to condemn our property and drive us off the land. I can tell you this right now, that during World War II, that was possible, and it was easy for people of Japanese American heritage. But I'm telling you right now, it's not going to be easy. Thank you.
Thank you. One other request is Kim McDonald.
Ms. Yokoyama has basically stated my same complaint that I've been making all along, except that she's done it more poignantly with better better style. But again, she's made the same points I've made all along. You are taking our houses and our property for mitigation to fund this project. Mr. Dirksen put his comments up there, and he put them in a certain order. And the last thing at the bottom always was the financial. The financial has been the primary reason for all the choices made. And I talked to Mr. Panos, who is long gone, and he told me, yes, we need to take your property to get government funding, or we will not be able to do this. And if you looked at the picture of the Okayama's property, you saw the road is right through the middle. If the people who own the land were considered at all, why isn't the road in a different place? It's because that's where it was planned earlier. It can be moved. It will cost you more to move it, to not impact their property more. And that's the thing. This is a long-term plan to put in a recreation area in West Sacramento, paid for by the flood monies. To any way you can grab money to put in this city improvement project. There has been no consideration for the landowners, the homeowners, at all. We have been getting contrary information from Mr. Dirksen all along. 1 minute you're told one thing, 1 minute you're told the next. Nobody will write anything down or give us an honest answer. There is more I'd just love to say, but you've heard it all before. There is no consideration for the landowners in this. The insult that you get by getting this paper that says, sign here, this is a wonderful offer, better take it, is just so gut-wrenching you can't understand unless they've done it to you. Thank you.
I guess I would turn to staff now to either if they have any comments or anything, or
Let me first of all say I'm pleased to hear that Ms. Yokoyama is open to having negotiations. We have tried to reach her at the phone number that we had, and so we're more than willing to talk more about all of those, all of the things going forward. Everything from, we've planned for moving the utilities to allow for the development of a well adjacent to the Village Parkway to be able to serve the remaining parcels. We have not talked in any recent time about the relocation of the home, but that's not out of the question. Certainly we could have that conversation. What were some of the other issues? The mitigation bank.
I guess one of the questions I have is, have you had access to the home?
We have not gone on the property because we have not had permission to go on the property after we submitted an offer.
Oh.
So we have not, the value of the home is based on some very gross estimates. They have not, the home hasn't been inspected. So to know what the outside or what other amenities it has, essentially a very general approach was taken to value the home. We found that home inspections do result in different valuations. I'd like to address the mitigation bank a little bit. First of all, we did submit an application to the Department of Water Resources through their application. That contract or that application has not been finalized by any means. As you know, as we've been reporting to you over the last few months, we've been working with the resource agencies to get our permits in place for the Interim Village Parkway and the levee project. There's been a lot of discussion about how much mitigation the property or the project provides for the effects that it causes on the environment and the community. So I don't know that we're not in a position to be able to say, yes, we have X number of acres to be ready to be banked and sold. So I just wanted to address that straight up because that's not the case at this time. Are there any other comments you'd like me to address?
Any questions?
No, no questions. Okay.
Well, Paul, just briefly, we we've decided on a setback levy, but where that levy was located and ultimately its final footprint has continued to be refined, and it seems like we've always headed towards the direction to minimize the land take. You know, you have a type of levy, and there's a certain, I know we discussed a farther setback at one point, and we basically have moved ourselves to the minimum of what will work for the project from the erosion standpoint and everything else. So, you know, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that, but.
Well, first of all, I'm not going to represent that I'm an engineer. And secondarily, I was, fairly new to the program when some of that decision making was going through. But from everything that I've seen and some of the things that I've heard at the different meetings is, when you're looking at 5.6 miles of a project, there are going to be trade-offs, and we're not going to avoid all injury to all private property owners. And so the combined alternatives were really meant to look at the feasibility of what was possible to be built and provide the greatest public good, and then to be refined down to see if there were ways to minimize some of the property takes, or some of the property acquisitions, just like you suggested. So at one point, you may recall, we had berms that were 200 feet. Now they're generally about 80 feet. That's probably one of the best examples. There was a discussion, there was also some coordination that was done relative to a slurry wall and relief wells. Well, the feasibility of putting in relief wells in the areas that were being requested appeared to not be very feasible for the project. And so those were foregone, and that's why we resulted at the design that we're at today.
Any other comments or questions? Well, this is a public hearing, and I am going to close.
No, we still have we have part 2.
Don't we have agenda item number 8?
Oh, we can do it that way. Sure, that's fine.
Okay. So I'm looking to the board for consideration.
I'll make the motion that we approve the resolution 15-04-01, authorizing an eminent domain action to acquire real property, APN 046-030-004-000.
And I will second that motion.
It has been moved and seconded. Are there any additions or anything else?
Anything you want to add, Bill?
No? I mean, I think this is, it's a difficult process to go through eminent domain and go through all of the different things. But I think that our staff and our engineers have put forth the best approach to have the citizens of West Sacramento in the safest manner. So, I mean, it's a shame that there are some people that get affected, and hopefully we can make sure that those people are justly compensated for. So, anyway.
I'll add just a few things onto that. I mean, I think all of us here understood that when we got to this portion of the project, the real estate acquisition, it's going to be the most emotional and probably the most contentious part of it. And, it's understandable. But from the very beginning, myself, and I know the gentleman next to me, we've instructed the staff to treat everyone fairly, understanding, and to ensure that they're compensated fairly and made whole. But this is acquisition of property by a public agency. It's a legal process, and we all have to follow in through that process to accomplish what we're out to. So,
From this meeting, because I'm going to interrupt, but there's no reason put the road on their property and take the levy off their property.
Fine. But what?
Kim, you know better than that.
But I think the best way to accomplish this is for all of us to stay engaged. And I would encourage Victoria and the other property owners to do that and to follow this process, and hopefully we'll come to an end and accomplish something that the property owners are fully compensated.
Okay.
Yeah, well said, Tom.
Well said. Well, I do have a motion and a second. Are there any opposed?
No?
Hearing none, that is so ordered. Now we move to agenda item number 8. Is this a public hearing to consider resolution 15-04-02, authorizing eminent domain to acquire real property in South River Road early implementation project? Mr. Dirksen.
Thank you. Again, just as an overview, 4 findings that are necessary for a resolution of necessity, in this particular case for 15-04-02. The public interest and necessity for the proposed project. The project is planned and located in a manner that's compatible with the greatest public good and least private injury. It's necessary, and the owner has received an offer for the purchase of the property.
One second. This is a public hearing, so I am going to open the public hearing at this time.
So again, the Southport, again, the EIP is located along the west bank of the river. You all know that this stretches from the Army Corps of Engineers project all the way down to the southern boundary. Significant erosion is along this entire reach with it, and in terms of evaluating the levee itself, there's underseepage, stability, and geometry issues in addition to the erosion. The design selection was deliberate and considered public safety first and foremost. Engineering requirements and constraints are habitat needs and mitigation requirements, the borrow needs for such a project, the effects of the community, as well as WSAFCA's ability to fund a project of this size with its existing resources. The South River parcel is approximately 9.5 acres and located in the middle of segment F. 8.7 acres is needed for levee improvements, which include the levee, the offset area, and an operations and maintenance corridor. This area, again, is being inquired in fee to ensure that WSAFCA and its assigns will have the necessary rights to operate and maintain the levee in the future and repair it if necessary to protect West Sacramento citizens as well as the businesses and investments in the community. The offer is made to the owner of record. As with Ms. Yokoyama, the WSAFCA, at the WSAFCA meeting in January, the board approved just compensation for the property at South River Road LLC. And a written offer package was assembled by BRI following the January meeting and mailed to the owner of record, and was received by Mr. Hart in late January, I believe. That concludes my comments.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to speak from the public? I don't see anybody wishes to speak, so are there any questions of staff? Don't see that, so I will close the public hearing, and I will turn to my colleagues and ask if there are some comments or anything they wish to report on.
No, other than, my previous comments pertain to this one too.
Yeah, that's true.
They went over well last time.
Yeah, they went over real well. Okay, I guess I'm looking for a motion.
And I'll bring forward that motion that we approve Resolution 1504-02, authorizing an eminent domain action on the property known as APN 046-040-006-000.
Okay. And I'll second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any opposed? Hearing none, so ordered. Okay, now we move to another part of our regular agenda, WSAFCA projects update.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm going to provide a couple of updates to the progress report, items of interest or of note, and/or any changes since the progress report was developed last week. Under the finance section, just want to remind the board that we completed the sale of the flood assessment bonds on March 17th, which generated about $30 million in bond proceeds. Of that amount, there's $20 million in new money that will be allocated to various flood improvement projects, primarily the Southport project. There was also a little over $9 million that goes to refunding the 2008 bonds for some savings, and about $1.5 million goes to creating a debt service reserve for the cost of issuance. Or debt service reserve and also for the cost of issuance. The refunding component of the 2008 bonds received or achieved about $1.7 million in total savings through 2038, which is equivalent to about a well, almost just shy of $1.2 million in net present value, which is a 13.7% savings, net present value savings of the refunded bonds. Staff is in the process of putting together packages to submit to the bond underwriter for disbursement of those bonds, and we'll be putting that money to good use as we advance the project forward. On the Southport project, we just received news early this week from Division that they have completed their review of the final EIS. They only had one comment. That one comment was not significant, and they are prepared to release the final EIS for the 30-day public review period once they receive the BO from National Marine and Fisheries Service. Speaking of the BO from National Marine and Fisheries Service, we met with the agency, the service, with the Corps a couple weeks ago to discuss the draft BO that was issued. We had a very good meeting with the service. They were welcome to all of our comments and suggestions. We provided those Monday of this week, and within 24 hours, essentially adopted all of our comments with very few adjustments and provided a final draft back to us for review. We'll be providing our very, very few comments to the BO later today, and hope to have a final BO, if not Friday, very early next week, and that'll complete that process for the Southport project. At that point, the service will then focus on drafting a BO for the GRR, and we do expect to receive a draft of that BO for review as well. For the cultural services consultation, and based on the recent experience of the Feather River project from Cedar Butte, we're anticipating some additional revisions to the draft programmatic agreement and possible delays in getting that programmatic agreement executed. So the decision, we met with the Corps and the Corps staff and Cultural Resources, and collectively we decided to develop a separate permitting package for Village Parkway, a separate agreement for the Village Parkway plans and specs, so we can move forward with that with the Corps, with SHPO and the tribe, and not jeopardize the Village Parkway construction schedule. So both those, we met with the Corps Tuesday of this week to do sort of an official handoff within Corps staff for both of those pieces forward, and we'll process those in parallel, and we'll keep the board apprised on our progress. For engineering design, as the board is aware, we released a request for proposal for construction management, inspection, quality of service, and testing services for the levee project. The proposals were received on March 27th. There's a team that's reviewing those proposals now. We'll meet next week, and we plan to make a selection and plan to bring an item to the board for consideration next month to award a contract to one of those firms for that service. On the Village Parkway design, a request for proposal for construction management and inspection services for that separate project was issued on March 20th, and the proposals are due on the 17th, not on the 24th, as is indicated in the package. I'll make a note of that. And then again, we will put together a team to review those submittals and plan to bring an item to the board for consideration at the June meeting. On the general reevaluation report, I need to apologize. The dates in there for the milestones have changed, and I did not reflect that in the progress report. So in the order that they are listed, the agency decision milestone has been scheduled with headquarters. That conference is scheduled for May 4th, and the sponsor, WSAFCA, will be present during that conference. There's a series of action items that are being conducted by the Corps in advance of that conference. They've received some preliminary comments from headquarters, and they're going through internal response to comments and preparation for that conference on the 4th. But again, we will be present on May 4th during that agency decision milestone conference. The final report milestone is now July of this year. The Civil Works Review Board is scheduled for October of this year, and the final Chief's report is scheduled for December. As I had mentioned once, just briefly on the NIMS BO, once the BO for the Southport is complete, and we anticipate that over the next week or so, we will then work with NIMS to review and comment on the draft biological opinion for the GRR, and then get that processed as quickly as we can. On the South Cross levy certification, I wanted to point out that one of the items remaining to complete in order to get that final package together for submission to the Corps was the television inspection of the SAC Regional's main sewer line that goes through the levee. That inspection was finally completed on April 2nd. Results of the inspection are going to be provided to, once they complete their, I don't know how they process it, but also their internal review. They'll provide a copy of a copy of the inspection to WSAFCA. We expect that over the next couple of weeks. And then we'll put the package together and work with the Corps to get that South Cross levy into the PL 8499 program. On public relations, we are meeting monthly now with representatives from the school board, specifically the high school, in preparation for this year's Flood Preparedness Week. We're very excited about some of the items that we're discussing and trying to put into play for this year. If it all pans out, we're looking forward to a very good public outreach campaign this year. And speaking of which, last year's, well, I guess would be the second year in a row that we've received an award for our flood preparedness activities. From the 2014 Flood Preparedness Week, we received a Sacramento Public Relations Association Gold Award for overall public relations campaigns in the media event or press conference category. Crocker & Crocker received that award on WSAFCA's behalf just last month, so it's a nice feather in our cap to be recognized for the effort that we all put into educating the community and participating in the community. And as we all know, flood preparedness is very important to our community. And then I think the last thing, speaking of emergency preparedness, we have completed the dynamic mapping tool portion of the flood emergency response plan that we're developing that will be finished by the end of the year. And we are now presenting that tool to various stakeholders, Yolo County Office of Emergency Services, operational area, the mutual aid response, I forget what the other A stands for, committee,
did a presentation to them just yesterday. So we're continuing to show our stakeholders in emergency response this very unique and sort of cutting-edge technology, dynamic mapping. We do plan to bring that presentation to the board in one of our future meetings, hopefully next month, and give you a sneak peek at one piece of our flood emergency response plan and what we've been working on. And that completes my update. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, any comments? Hearing none, I think that was our last agenda item.